The stars outside the giant Voltrax flagship glowed like small flames in the black sea of space. Inside the main hall of the ship, tall alien beings stood in long robes. Their skin was smooth and silver blue, and their glowing eyes showed wisdom and power. At the center of the hall stood Queen Zalara, ruler of the Voltrax Empire. Queen Zalara was known across many galaxies as a strong and fair leader. She had led her people through wars, saved entire planets from hunger, and kept peace with most. Of the alien worlds in the quadrant, she was proud, graceful, and respected. Today was an important day. The Voltrax were meeting with humans from Earth for the first time in person. Both sides hoped for friendship and trade. Some hoped for more, maybe even an alliance. Queen Zalara stood tall as the human diplomats entered. They were neat uniforms, and their faces looked calm, but curious. Among them was a quiet man with glasses and a small scanner in his hand. His name was Dr. Neil Warren, a medical scientist from Earth. He was not a soldier or a politician. He was only here to observe and report on the health conditions between both species. Everything seemed normal. The Voltrax spoke through soft translators. The humans answered politely. Queen Zalara asked about Earth's ways. The lead ambassador spoke about peace and cooperation. Then, suddenly, something went wrong. Queen Zalara stopped speaking. Her silver eyes widened. She reached toward her chest. Her body shook. Gasps filled the hall. One of her guards shouted, "My queen," and ran forward. Zalara fell to her knees. Her crown hit the floor with a sharp sound. She collapsed completely, her long robes spreading like wings around her. Her breathing turned shallow, and her skin faded to a pale gray. The hall turned into chaos. Guards surrounded her. Medical drones flew in from the ceiling. One of the Voltrax doctors touched her neck and shook his head. She is alive, but barely. The humans were quickly escorted out of the room. Dr. Neil looked back over his shoulder, worried. He had seen something like this before, but not in an alien queen. In the human guest room, the Earth team was silent. A tall man in uniform said, "We are told to stay here until further notice." Dr. Neil sat at the edge of his seat. She showed clear signs of heart failure. He whispered, "You're not her doctor." Someone reminded him, "I know, but she needs help, and they don't know what's happening." Meanwhile, in the medbay of the ship, Queen Zalara lay on a large platform. Dozens of glowing machines tried to stabilize her. Her body twitched from time to time. The Voltrax doctors looked confused. "We've scanned everything. Her organs are failing. No virus, no poison, no damage," said one. "Then why is her heart shutting down?" asked another. No one had an answer. From behind the medical curtain, a young Voltrax doctor named Lura listened carefully. She had been trained in alien biology and had read a little about humans. Lura had noticed something strange. The queen's pattern of heartbeats, then a sudden drop, matched something she had seen in one of the Earth files. She turned to a screen and searched through the human medical data they were given. A condition called ventricular fibrillation caught her attention. It sounded very similar. "Could it be this?" she whispered. She looked around. The other doctors were too focused on the machines. She made a bold decision. A few minutes later, Laura quietly walked into the human guest room. "Who here is the medical expert?" she asked. Dr. Neil stood. "That's me." She looked at him with nervous eyes. "Can you come with me?" "Please." Quietly. Inside the medbay, Neil was shocked at what he saw. The queen's body was barely moving, her skin color fading more with each minute. Laura explained everything quickly. Neil checked her vital signs. "Yes, this looks like a heart rhythm disorder. Very close to what we call a heart attack, but caused by electrical misfiring. Can you fix it?" Laura asked. "I need a defibrillator, or at least something that can send a pulse of energy to her heart with exact timing." Laura bit her lip. "We have energy tools, but none for that purpose." "Then I'll build one," Neil said. They gathered parts quickly: a small power cell, metal pads from a scanner, and thin wires. Neil used a tool to adjust the voltage. He worked fast. Time was running out. Laura kept checking the queen's pulse. "It's almost gone." Finally, Neil said, I'm ready. He placed the metal pads on Queen Zalara's chest, charging. Now, a small spark jumped from the pads. The Queen's body jerked. No change. Again. Neil said. Another spark. A louder jolt. Beep. 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 A rhythm. Faint, but steady. Laura's eyes widened. It's working. The machines around them began showing stable signs. The Queen's skin slowly turned back to its glowing blue. Her fingers twitched. Her lips moved slightly. She's breathing on her own, whispered Laura. Just then, guards stormed into the room. What is this human doing? Laura stepped in front of Neil. He saved her. Without him, she would be gone. The guards looked, unsure. Then one of the medical machines spoke in Voltrax's language. Vital signs restored. Status, stable. The room fell silent. Queen Zalara was alive, and a human had saved her life. The news spread quickly through the vast corridors of the Voltrax flagship. Queen Zalara, the strongest ruler in the galaxy, was saved by a human. Some found it hard to believe. Others whispered in secret, unsure what to think. In the medbay, the Queen rested quietly now. Her breathing was calm, and her eyes fluttered. Opened slowly. Round her, alien doctors and guards watched nervously. Dr. Neil Warren sat with Laura nearby. They talked in low voices. I still can't believe this, Laura said. You actually built that machine from parts lying around. Neil smiled gently. I learned to adapt. Sometimes you have to work with what you have. Laura looked at him with new respect. The other doctors didn't want your help. They thought humans were too primitive. Neil shrugged. Sometimes pride gets in the way of saving lives. The Voltrax High Council met soon after. Their chamber was vast and dark, filled with alien leaders wearing robes of power and authority. At the center sat the oldest and wisest council member, Elder Zorvin. Humans saved our queen. One council member said angrily, Is this not a disgrace? How could we allow an outsider to touch the life of our greatest leader? Another council member, calmer, replied, But we must admit, she would be dead without that human. We must consider new ideas. The debate continued. Some wanted to thank Earth and open talks for friendship. Others wanted to isolate the humans. Fearing weakness, back on the flagship, Queen Zalara was awake. She looked at the faces around her, but then asked for a private meeting with Dr. Neil. In a small chamber lit softly. Zalara sat and regarded Neil carefully. Why did you help me? She asked, her voice still weak but firm. Neil looked into her glowing eyes and answered honestly. Because saving a life is the right thing to do, no matter who you are. Zalara was silent for a moment. Most humans do not understand us. But you showed kindness. Neil nodded. We have many differences, but life is precious everywhere. Meanwhile, the Voltrax doctors continued studying Queen Zalara's condition. They ran more tests and scanned her body carefully, but the cause of her collapse remained a mystery. Laura stayed close to Neil. Can you teach us about your medical methods? She asked. Neil smiled. I will try. Medicine is about learning from each other. Together, they began to share knowledge, comparing human and Voltrax biology. The aliens were surprised by how much the two species shared beneath their different skins. Not everyone was happy about this growing friendship. In the shadows of the ship, whispers of doubt and fear spread. Some council members watched Neil and Zalara's meetings with suspicion. One man, Vasher, a powerful advisor, met secretly with others. The Queen's weakness is a danger to us all. Vasher said, The humans are not to be trusted. We must protect the Empire. His words sowed fear. One evening, as Neil prepared to leave the medbay, Laura approached him with concern. There is more to the Queen's illness than we know, she said softly. We must find out why she suffered this attack. Neil nodded, agreed. I will help. Together, they began looking for answers. In the Queen's chamber, Zalara was resting when Neil entered quietly. Your Majesty, he said, there is something important I need to check. She nodded. Neil gently took a small device and scanned her bloodstream. His eyes widened. There are traces of a rare metal toxin in your blood, he said. It can cause heart failure. Zalara frowned. Where did it come from? Neil shook His head, I don't know yet, but we must find out quickly. The next day, Neil and Lura searched through recent events. They learned the Queen had received a gift from a council member during the diplomatic meeting. A small box of beautiful stones. Lura frowned. Could it be from Vasher? Neil nodded slowly. It's possible. They decided to investigate. Quietly. Meanwhile, Queen Zalara met with her trusted guards. I feel stronger, she said. But we must be careful. Someone tried to harm me. Her lead guard bowed. We will protect you. My queen. Zalara's eyes shone with determination. I will not allow fear to rule us. Neil and Lura confronted Vasher quietly. We know about the poison, Neil said firmly. Vasher's face changed. You have no proof. Lura stepped forward. We will find it. Vasher left, anger burning in his eyes. As the days passed, the Queen's health improved. The bond between Neil and Zalara grew stronger. Their respect and trust became a symbol of hope for both humans and Voltrax. The story of how a human saved an alien queen began to change the future of two worlds. Queen Zalara sat quietly in her private chamber. Her eyes were open, but her mind was deep in thought. Her body had grown stronger with each passing day, but her heart felt heavy with questions. Who tried to kill her? And why did a human, someone from a distant, less advanced planet, save her life when others only watched? There was a gentle knock at the door. Enter, she said. The door slid open, and Dr. Neil Warren stepped in with a soft smile. He looked tired but calm. Good morning, Your Majesty, he said. Zalara nodded. You may call me Zalara when we are alone. Neil was surprised but bowed his head politely. Then, good morning, Zalara. She studied his face for a moment. I want to understand you, Neil. You are not a soldier, not a leader. You had no duty to help me, yet you risked punishment to save my life. Neil sat down across from her. I didn't need a reason. Where I come from. If someone is in danger and you can help, you do. Zalara looked at him with interest. Many of my own people stood frozen, afraid to act without permission. But you didn't wait. Neil nodded. Sometimes waiting cost a life. There was silence between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Outside the chamber, Lura waited in the corridor. She had been helping Neil every day, learning more about human science and sharing what she knew about Voltrax medicine. She noticed the guards giving them suspicious looks more often now. When Neil stepped out, she walked beside him. They're watching you, she whispered. I know, he said, but I think the Queen trusts me. Lura gave a small smile. She does. And that scares some people. Neil raised his eyebrows. Why would trust scare them? Because not everyone wants peace, she answered. Some fear what might change if humans and Voltrax grow too close. Later that day, in the Queen's council room, a private meeting was held. Zalara sat at the head of the table with a calm but serious face. A few trusted advisors were present, including Elder Zorvin and Commander Haven. Dr. Neil and Lura stood quietly at the side. I have decided, Zalara said, that we must find the source of the poison that nearly ended my life. It was not an accident. It was an attack. Gasps filled the room. Commander Haven stood. Your Majesty, do you have suspects? Zalara turned her gaze toward Neil and nodded. Dr. Neil has discovered the toxin. He believes it was placed in the ceremonial gift I received, possibly the stones given by Counselor Vasher. Murmurs filled the room. Elder Zorvin frowned. Vasher is powerful. If he is behind this, we must proceed carefully. I will not let power protect a traitor, Zalara said firmly. Gather evidence, quietly. I want truth, not guesses. Neil stepped forward. With Lura's help, I can test the stones directly. If the metal matches what was in your blood, we'll know. Zalara nodded. Begin at once. Meanwhile, Vasher sat in his own chamber, staring at the star map on his wall. His eyes were cold. He had heard whispers that the Queen was investigating the poison. His fingers tapped the edge of his chair slowly. Too many humans, he muttered. Too many changes. He pressed a button on his table. A dark figure appeared on the screen. Watch them, Vasher ordered, especially the human doctor and the young healer. If they get too close to the truth, stop them. Neil and Lura worked late into the night in the lab. The gift stones had been quietly removed from the Queen's chamber and placed on the analysis table. Neil scanned the stones with a small device, watching the results appear on the screen. "It's the same metal," he said. "Exactly the same as what I found in Zalara's blood." Lura sighed. "That confirms it." "We have to tell her immediately," Neil said. But just as they turned to leave, the lights in the lab flickered and went out from the shadows. Two figures stepped inside the room. Lura gasped. Guards, but they weren't ordinary guards. They moved quickly and without a word. One of them reached for Neil. Neil ducked, but the second figure caught him from behind. "Stop!" Lura shouted, grabbing a metal tool from the table. She swung it, hitting one of the attackers in the arm. The attacker groaned and backed off. Neil pushed the other away and grabbed the data chip from the machine. "Run!" he yelled. They ran out of the lab into the dark hallway. Alarms began to ring through the ship. Queen Zalara was in her chamber when the alert came. Security breach. Medical wing. Her eyes narrowed. Neil and Lura. She stood and walked to the wall panel. "Guards, find Dr. Neil and healer Lura. Bring them to me. Now." Neil and Lura hid in a storage room, catching their breath. The data chip was safe in Neil's hand. "We can't stay here," Lura said. "We need to reach the Queen." Neil answered. Suddenly, the door opened and Queen Zalara's personal guard stood there. "It's okay," said the leader. "She sent us." Relief washed over their faces. Moments later, they stood before the Queen again. Neil handed her the chip. "This proves Vasher tried to poison you," he said. "The same metal in these stones is in your blood." Zalara looked at the chip, then at Neil. "You have saved my life twice now," she said softly. Neil shook his head. "I only did what anyone should." Zalara smiled faintly. "Not everyone would." Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued spinning quietly. But inside that room, something important had changed. A human had not only saved an alien queen but had earned her trust, and maybe her heart. The starship Voltrax Prime floated silently above a glowing gas planet. But inside the great ship, nothing was quiet anymore. Queen Zalara had seen the proof herself. The stones gifted to her, filled with a rare metallic toxin, matched exactly what Dr. Neil had found in her blood. There was no doubt left. Counselor Vasher, one of the Queen's oldest advisors, had tried to kill her. The truth sent a wave of shock through the Voltrax Empire. For generations, the Voltrax were proud of their discipline and loyalty. But now, betrayal had come from within. Not only that, a human had uncovered it. Zalara called a secret meeting in her private strategy room. Only 4 people were present: herself, Dr. Neil, Lura, and Elder Zorvin. "We must move carefully," she began. "Vasher still has supporters. If we arrest him in public, there could be panic or worse, a split in the council." Elder Zorvin nodded. "Some believe Vasher is the voice of tradition. Removing him without clear words may turn many against you." Neil spoke quietly. "Then what if you show them the truth? Let the evidence speak before anyone can twist it." Zalara looked at him thoughtfully. "You speak like a leader." Neil smiled a little. "I just speak as someone who's tired of lies." Meanwhile, Vasher remained unaware of the Queen's next move. He believed he still had time to control the story. He met with his followers in secret, whispering that the Queen had grown too soft, too close to humans. "We must act before she hands our empire to the outsiders," he warned. But unknown to him, one of his own guards was recording everything and sending it straight to the Queen. The next day, Queen Zalara entered the High Council chamber, standing tall and proud. Her skin had returned to its full shining blue. Her presence was strong. Counselors stood as she entered. Even Vasher bowed slightly, masking his concern. Zalara raised her hand. "I have returned," she said, "and I bring answers." She looked at the gathered leaders. "My sudden illness was not a mystery of nature. It was caused by poison placed inside a diplomatic gift, a gift given by one of you." Gasps filled the room. Vasher kept his face still. "This is a serious accusation." Zalara turned toward a large screen behind her. With a signal, The evidence played. Images of the poisoned stones, data from Neil's scans, video of Vasher's secret meeting, where he spoke of removing the queen before she grew too soft. The room fell silent. Vasher's face turned pale. This is false," he said quickly, "fabricated by the human." But Elder Zorvin stepped forward. "The analysis is confirmed by 3 separate labs. The evidence is clear." Guards moved toward Vasher. He tried to step back, but there was nowhere to run. Zalara's voice was firm. "You betrayed your oath. You tried to break peace before it could begin. You are under arrest." Vasher was taken away in silence. Outside the council chamber, the news spread fast across the Voltrax Empire. Broadcasts told the story. Queen Zalara saved by a human doctor. Betrayal stopped with human help. Some were shocked, some were curious, but many were hopeful. Later that evening, Zalara stood on a quiet observation deck, staring at the stars. Neil walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. "You're safe now," he said. She turned to look at him. "Because of you." Neil shook his head. "Because of truth. I just helped find it." There was a pause between them. Zalara looked out the window again. "Do humans ever wonder why the stars are so far apart?" Neil smiled. "All the time. I used to think it was to keep us from each other," she said. "But now I wonder if it's to make the journey more meaningful." Neil looked at her, seeing more than just a leader now. He saw someone who carried great weight and a deep heart. In the following days, things began to change. The Queen called for a new alliance meeting between Earth and the Voltrax Empire. This time, humans were treated not as guests but as equals. The Voltrax medics requested to study human medical methods. Lura and Neil led the first joint healing sessions between both species. Zalara spoke with Earth's leaders through secure communication lines. She thanked them for sending someone like Neil. "He is not just a doctor," she said. "He is a bridge between our worlds." But not everyone welcomed these changes. In a cold station near the edge of the Voltrax system, a group of unknown ships watched from afar. Their commanders listened to the news and frowned. "Humans are rising too quickly," one of them said. "We may need to act soon." They vanished into the black void, leaving no trace behind. Back aboard Voltrax Prime, Neil walked the halls, now greeted by guards and crew with small bows. He had gone from an unknown visitor to a name spoken with respect. One day, Lura asked him, "Will you return to Earth soon?" Neil thought about it. "Maybe, but not yet." "Why?" He looked out a nearby window and said, "Because there's still work to do here, and someone I want to understand better." Lura smiled gently. "You mean the Queen?" Neil gave a quiet laugh. "Maybe," and in her chamber, Queen Zalara wrote a message to be recorded and shared across her empire. "There are many stars in the sky, and many paths between them. But today, one path opened because a human chose to help rather than fear. Let us not waste this chance. Let this be the start of something greater for both our peoples." Her words echoed through the stars. The Queen who almost died and the human who saved her were now symbols of a new beginning. It had been many days since Counselor Vasher was arrested, but Queen Zalara's heart still felt uneasy. The danger was over. Yes, but a strange question stayed in her mind. Why had her body reacted so badly to the poison? The amount found was very small. It should not have caused a full heart failure. Even Lura, now head of the Queen's medical team, had doubts. She brought this up one morning in the medbay. "There is something more," Lura said softly to Dr. Neil. The poison was real, but not strong enough to stop her heart. "That means something else helped it happen." Neil leaned over the scanner, eyes sharp. "You're right. I've been thinking the same thing." Together, they ran a full-body scan on the Queen's recent test results. The scanner beeped softly as images passed across the screen. Neil's eyes narrowed. "There," he said, pointing. "See that dark line around the main heart vessel? That shouldn't be there." Lura looked closely. "Is it scar tissue?" Neil nodded. "Yes. Old damage. It's not from the poison. It's from before." Lura gasped. The Queen had a heart injury in the past? Queen Zalara was surprised when they told her. "This cannot be," she said, confused. I've never been injured. I would remember something this serious. Neil hesitated. It might not have been recent. It could have been caused slowly, over many years, stress, pressure, emotional pain. Sometimes those things leave invisible marks. Zalara fell silent. Then, quietly, she said, "There was one time, during the war with the Orcan, I made a choice that cost thousands of lives. After that, I often felt tightness in my chest. But I thought it was only guilt." Neil nodded. Sometimes guilt becomes pain, and pain, if ignored, becomes damage. They now understood the full truth. The poison only pushed her heart to the edge. But the real cause was older hidden damage that no one noticed for years. Neil sighed. If this wasn't discovered in time, it would have killed her one day, poison or not. Zalara looked at him, her voice steady. "So, you didn't just save me from Vasher. You saved me from my own past." Neil didn't reply. He only nodded as the Queen recovered. She called a special medical meeting. Leaders from Earth and Voltrax gathered inside the medical dome of the ship. Laura stood beside Neil as they explained everything they had learned, not just about the poison, but about how deep emotions and inner wounds could hurt even the strongest hearts. Many Voltrax doctors were surprised. They believed their race was too evolved to suffer such problems. But Zalara spoke with calm wisdom. "We may be strong, but we are not unbreakable. We must learn not only how to treat the body, but also how to heal the heart." Her words touched. Minutes later, as Neil returned to his quarters, he found a sealed message on his desk. It had the Queen's royal symbol on it. He opened it and read, "Come to the Garden Observatory at first light. There is something I must show you, Zalara." The Garden Observatory was a quiet place filled with glowing plants, soft lights, and peaceful air. It sat at the top of the ship, with a clear view of the stars. Neil arrived just as the artificial lights rose like a sunrise. Zalara stood there alone, wearing a light robe instead of her usual royal armor. Her face was calm but thoughtful. "You came," she said. "Of course," Neil replied. She turned toward the stars. "I used to come here as a child. It was one of the few places where I felt safe to feel like myself." Neil stood beside her. "It's beautiful." Zalara looked at him. "You were right. Pain doesn't just live in the body. It hides deep, behind words, behind duties. I thought I had to carry everything alone." "You don't," Neil said gently. "No one does." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Do humans believe in second chances?" Neil smiled. "We do. Sometimes we need them more than once." She nodded slowly. "Then I ask this, help me lead my people into something new. Stay, guide us. Not just in science, but in understanding." Neil looked into her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she replied. "Because now I know strength is not just in shields or power, but in honesty and connection." The days that followed brought great changes. Queen Zalara started the Healing Council, a new branch of leadership focused on both physical and emotional health. Laura was made its first director, and Neil was named Earth's permanent envoy on the Voltrax ship. Together, they taught classes, shared knowledge, and built trust between two very different worlds. More and more Voltrax began speaking to humans with open minds. Barriers began to fall. Friendship began to bloom. And always, at the center of it all, were Zalara and Neil, two hearts from different stars, who had saved each other in more ways than one. But far beyond, in the cold silence between galaxies, someone else was watching. A hidden force, unknown to both Earth and Voltrax, listened and waited. And they were not pleased with what was happening. The Voltrax Prime flagship continued its silent path through the stars, now carrying something more valuable than weapons or rare minerals. Hope. Queen Zalara had survived a deadly plot, and with the help of Dr. Neil Warren, she had uncovered a hidden weakness that even her best doctors had missed. Now, her heart was strong, her mind was clear, and her plans for peace were beginning to take shape. She had given Neil a special position, advisor of life sciences and human integration, the first human ever trusted so closely by the Voltrax royal family. Many celebrated this new connection, but not everyone was happy. Inside the tall towers of the Science Dome, Neil walked beside Laura. answering questions from alien scientists who were still learning to trust human ideas. Wait, one of them said, staring at a human medical chart. You believe stress can affect the heart without any physical injury? Yes, Neil replied. Your queen is living proof. Emotional strain can build up quietly and damage the body over time. Another scientist shook his head. Strange. But if it's true, it changes everything. Laura smiled and placed a hand on the table. That's why we must listen to each other. Learning doesn't mean giving up who we are, it means becoming more. Neil gave her an approving nod. Together, they made a strong team. Later, as Neil passed through the ship's main corridor, he noticed more Voltrax nodding in respect. Some even greeted him with short phrases in his own language. Good morning, Dr. Earthman. May your steps be steady. Neil smiled each time, surprised at how quickly things were changing. But then he turned a corner and met someone not smiling. A tall Voltrax officer stood there, arms crossed. His armor was black, and his eyes were cold. You walk these halls freely, the officer said, as if you belong here. Neil stayed calm. I go where I'm invited. Invitations can be taken back, the officer said, and walked past him without another word. Neil's smile faded. That evening, Queen Zalara invited Neil to a private dinner in her quiet study room. The table was simple, with glowing fruit and warm tea from her home world. She wore a relaxed robe, and her tone was softer than usual. You're becoming a symbol now, she said, pouring tea into 2 cups. Some see you as the future. Others see you as a threat. Neil accepted the tea. That's normal. Change always makes noise. Zalara looked at him carefully. Do you regret staying here? He shook his head. No, but I didn't expect to feel so responsible. You are, she said, but not alone. For a while, they sat in silence, sipping tea under the stars. Then Neil asked quietly, do you think your people will truly accept humans one day? Zalara smiled. They are already starting to, but trust must grow slowly, like a tree. Neil nodded. And what about you? Do you trust me? She looked directly into his eyes. Yes, with my life. The next day brought a surprise announcement. The Queen had planned a grand ceremony to celebrate the New Earth Voltrax Medical Alliance. It would be broadcast across the galaxy. Leaders, scientists, and citizens would watch. It was not just a celebration, it was a message. The future would be built together. Zalara asked Neil to stand beside her during the event. I want you there, not just as a doctor, she said, but as proof that we can rise above fear. Neil agreed, though he felt the weight of it. As the ceremony day arrived, the great hall was filled with glowing lights, music, and banners showing both Earth and Voltrax symbols. Zalara stepped onto the stage wearing her royal armor, strong and beautiful, like the stars themselves. Beside her, Neil stood in formal human dress, clean and simple. Laura stood behind them with other key healers, all ready to speak. Zalara raised her hand, and silence filled the room. My people, she began, her voice echoing gently. Once, I stood on the edge of death. I was saved not by machines, not by war, but by a human who listened, who cared, and who saw me not as a queen, but as a person. She looked at Neil. He reminded me that even in the coldness of space, warmth still lies in the hearts of those who dare to help others. There was a long pause. Then she said, let today be the day we stop calling each other strangers. The hall erupted in applause. But far above, in the shadow of the asteroid belt, an unmarked ship listened to the broadcast. Inside, cloaked figures watched the screen. He has gone too far, said one of them. This human is now her shadow. They are building unity, another said. We must break it before it grows stronger. A hand slammed onto the table. Then we strike soon. Back on Voltrax Prime, Neil walked through the ship's garden with Laura. You stood well today, she said. Neil chuckled. My knees were shaking. You still looked brave. They both laughed softly. Then Laura became serious. Be careful, Neil. Some hearts take longer to heal, and some never want peace. Neil nodded. I know, but I believe in what we're doing, and I believe in the Queen. That night, in her chamber, Queen Zalara stood alone at the window. She watched the stars slowly drift by. Behind her, the doors opened. "Kneel," she said. Without turning, he stepped inside quietly. "How did you know it was me?" "I can feel your presence now, like a quiet breeze." He stood beside her. The speech was powerful. She turned to face him. "I meant every word." For a moment, nothing else mattered. To leaders from two very different worlds stood together in peace. But far beyond, the shadow of conflict was rising again, and this time it would test them both in ways they never expected. The galaxy was watching. The story of Queen Zalara and the human doctor had already traveled to dozens of planets. It was a story of peace, healing, and hope. But not everyone welcomed that hope. In the deep shadows of space, a secret fleet was preparing to strike. They were not from Earth, and they were not Voltrax. They were an old enemy forgotten by most and feared by the rest. The Varnuk, a race of warlords and raiders, believed in only one rule: the strongest must rule. And now they had chosen their next target, Queen Zalara, inside the Voltrax Prime flagship. Queen Zalara stood before her command table, her face calm, but focused. The room was full of tension. Alarms had gone off only minutes ago. A fast-approaching fleet was detected. No message, no signal, only weapons locked and ready. Neil stood beside her. Lura and a few scientists watched from the sides. "They are not responding," said Commander Haven. "It's a Varnuk battle. Group, their weapons are charging." Zalara nodded. "They've come to stop what we've built." Neil looked at the screen showing the incoming ships. "They're afraid of peace. They're afraid of losing control," Zalara replied. The Varnuk ships appeared on the main display, black like shadows, covered in spikes and strange armor. They moved like hunters. "Fast and without mercy. Shields up," Zalara ordered. "Do not fire unless they strike first." Seconds passed like hours. Then, a red flash. "They've opened fire," shouted a technician. The ship shook as the first blast hit the outer defense ring. Lights flickered. Alarms echoed. Zalara's voice stayed firm. "Return fire. Target their engines, not their lives. We do not start wars." The battle outside turned fierce. Blasts of light crossed the stars. The Voltrax ships defended the Queen's flagship with skill. But the Varnuk were known for chaos. They didn't care for strategy. They only wanted destruction. Inside the ship, systems began to fail. Part of the power grid went down. Smoke rose from a burning console. "We've lost control of the medical bay," someone shouted. Zalara turned to Neil. "Go, help the wounded." He nodded and ran without a second thought. Neil and Lura rushed through the damaged corridors, stepping over sparks and debris. The medbay was full of injured crew, some Voltrax, some humans. A young soldier cried out, holding her arm. Neil knelt beside her. "You'll be okay. Breathe slow." Lura handed him tools. "We need to move fast. More are coming." Neil's hands worked quickly, stopping bleeding, checking heartbeats, giving oxygen. But then the lights flickered again and went out. "No power," Lura said. "Life support is failing." Neil looked at the wounded. "They won't survive." Without air, back in the command center, Zalara watched as the enemy ships moved closer. One blast hit the engine room. Shields are down to 30%. The room trembled. Zalara clenched her fists. "I must go to the core. If we lose power, we lose everything." Commander Haven stepped forward. "But your majesty, this is my ship," she said, "and my people." She left the command room without another word. Down in the energy core, sparks flew from broken circuits. The main power line was failing. Zalara entered with two guards, her face firm. A technician cried, "We can't hold it. The reactors are overheating." Zalara walked to the control panel and placed her hand on the surface. Her royal blood allowed her direct access to the ship's inner systems. "Redirect power to medical and shields," she ordered. "But that will shut down the command deck." "Do it," she said. The ship's lights flickered again, then stabilized. In the medbay, air returned. The lights blinked on. Machines came to life. Neil looked up in shock. She did it. The Varnuk ships prepared for one final attack. aiming all weapons at the heart of the Voltrax fleet. But just as they fired, something unexpected happened. Earth ships appeared. 3 cruisers came out of warp near the battle. Their weapons flared. Their engines roared. Captain Mirrorstone of Earth's Space Defense Fleet sent a signal. To the Varnock, stand down. You face not 1 world, but 2. The Varnock, unprepared for reinforcements, hesitated. Then turned and fled. The battle was over. Ours. Later, the damage was being repaired. Fires were gone. Wounded were healing. Neil sat beside Queen Zalara in the Garden Observatory again. Her arm was bandaged, and her robe was dusty, but her eyes still shined. You saved the ship. Neil said, you saved the people, she replied. He smiled. Maybe we save each other. She turned to him slowly. You were right from the beginning. Peace takes more than words. It takes action, courage, and heart. They stood together, staring at the stars, across the galaxy. The story of the human and the queen spread like fire. A human had healed her heart. She had opened the door to a new age. Together, they faced enemies not just with weapons but with wisdom, care, and unity. From then on, the people of Earth and Voltrax remembered their names together not as rulers and guests, but as partners of peace. And the stars, once so far apart, felt just a little closer. The end.